Belal Muhammad explains why the Shavkat Rakhmonov fight, while financially less interesting, would be more beneficial for him than any other matchup as his next title defense, including the Kamaru-Usman clash. Belal thinks that a victory over the highly touted Rakhmonov, who's perceived as the most dangerous contender in the division, would qualify him in eyes of the majority of fans as the real champion who deserves to have the division belt, thus earning him respect and reducing the hate toward him. The newly crowned welterweight champ does see the ways in which a fight against Kamaru Usman would make a better tactical choice as the first title defense, but when imagining a positive outcome, namely a victory, even a dominant one, Belal claims that excuses from and for Usman would flood the MMA space, and many fans wouldn't want to give him credit. There would be comments like, Kamaru's too old, and he's lost 3 fights in a row. That wasn't the same Usman, and so on. Belal shared thoughts on his little dilemma.
Obviously, money plays a big factor in everything. Usman, you probably make the most money with because I think he's the biggest name. And legacy-wise, he was the guy that was the reigning champion for a long time. Dana White said he was better than GSP. So I think legacy, for sure, I would want to fight Usman before he's done. But Shavkat is that guy. I had to beat that Sean Brady, right, who had all the hype, and I took his O from him. So for me, beating him, I think that there's no excuses. If I go out there and I fight Usman now, people are going to say, oh, Usman's on a 3-fight losing streak. He's done with. He's old. He's this. He's that. Shavkat's the guy. I beat him. There's really nothing you can say. He's undefeated on 18-0, all finishes. He's young. There's nothing you can say. There's a lot of guys out there in the division right now that don't have fights. Jack Della is on a big win streak, doesn't have a fight. Ian Machado doesn't have a fight. You have Sean Brady, who just won this weekend dominantly. He's right back in the mix. And I think a lot of those guys are going to have to fight each other just so we start getting clear contenders. Like, everybody can't just hold their own.
Michael Chandler reveals the moment he realized the Conor fight was not happening. Iron Mike's gambit of taking a long time off the sport and not fighting other big names in order to wait for Conor, in hopes that the fight would eventually take place and the rewards would be worth the time and resources spent, turned out to be the wrong game plan. And as he finally moved on from his dream red panty fight, Mike still believes that following his fight against Charles Oliveira, he will get the chance to welcome McGregor back into the sport. And while all focus is on the Oliveira rematch, he doesn't want to let prospect of the Conor payday go just yet. In his latest interview, Chandler commented on the final phases of the McGregor fight falling apart, and the moment he knew that the bout was not happening anymore. From the pinky injury to multiple date changes, the matchup had been perceived as a doomed one by many fans for a long time, and Mike talks about the reality of this hitting him.
December was definitely the cutoff, but also, we were talking about June. We were talking about June with a broken pinky toe, which is a 6-week injury. Get back in there, put a 2-month training camp in, you're good. We should have been able to fight by August, September, October. It was interesting looking at the dates. You're looking at Abu Dhabi dates, you're looking at Salt Lake City, you're looking at, some of these other dates. I think, Manchester was in July. So there was some interesting time over the summer where these dates were outside of the country. And then immediately when it was, started sounding like it wasn't going to be December, I was like, hey boys, I'm going to go bet on myself. I'm going to roll the dice. And it's really funny. You've had 1,000 fighters sit here across from you and talk to you doing interviews, and all of them who have said that I was Conor's little whipping boy, or I was waiting too long, or I was wasting my career. Every single one of them would have held on to this Conor fight, even though they say publicly that they wouldn't. Every single one of those guys wants this fight.
John Jones experiences an unexpected issue in his training camp for the fight against Stipe on UFC 309. One of his main sparring partners, a Russian professional heavyweight boxer, revealed that John kicked him out of his camp and the team in general. Leonid Grachev had been helping John in the boxing department for many years, and he took an active part in Jones's current training camp in the lead-up for his title defense against Stipe. Well, in a recent interview with a Russian channel, Leonid revealed that John terminated their relationship and kicked him out of his gym. This happened as a result of Leonid training with Stipe. Yeah, while John's preparations are ongoing, Leonid traveled to Stipe's camp and trained with him as well. A very strange decision that resulted in something that was not difficult to predict. John perceived Leonid as a traitor and immediately cut him off as a teammate and as a friend. Leonid claims that they had a close relationship, and now, as a result of this incident, it is all over. Quote, So, recently I traveled to Philadelphia to meet up with some of my old coaches and get some work in. We sparred 3 times a week and everything went as usual. Before leaving, I told John where I was going, and he was okay with me not being in his camp for a little period. So, while in Philly, one of my coaches offered me to go to Ohio to train with Stipe, who is coached by his friend. I agreed to this, but told him that Stipe's team should know that I'm training with John, so they don't think that I'm a spy or something. I also called John and told him about this. I said that I was going to train with Stipe and asked if he was fine with it. He was like, well, okay, do whatever you want, no problem, let me know how it goes. I trained with Stipe, sparred with him, but didn't give away any secrets about John. The following day, Brandon Gibson called me and said that John was upset at me because of my decision to train with Stipe and that he didn't want to see me at the gym. Basically that it was all over. I called John, but he didn't respond. I texted him and the result was the same. Later, I noticed that he unfollowed me on Instagram as well. So it's over, I guess. End quote. Dana White didn't appreciate MGM not giving him the venue for O'Malley versus Merab, instead opting to host the Canelo Alvarez fight on Mexican Independence Day. This played a major part in the Sphere event materializing for the UFC, something that required much more than the budget for an average UFC event, and while UFC 306 turned out to be a pretty good show at the Sphere, it isn't surprising that the company would much prefer spending 3 or 4 times less than what they spent for that venue. Well, following the last Contender Series fights, on the press conference, Dana said that how things went down for the Sphere event left a bad taste in his mouth, and that next time, for that date, he will no longer host events in Las Vegas. Dana didn't hide his dissatisfaction with how he was treated by people in charge of MGM, and when a reporter asked him if he had heard how they reacted to the Sphere event, Dana responded with little filter in a fashion usual to him. What this means for Vegas events and relationships with certain people is yet to be seen.
Do you feel like that is a future venue for the UFC? Like it's not one and done?
I'm already looking at going to Mexico next year. I want to go to Guadalajara next year for Noche.
Nice.
They're building a new arena there. It'll be done in 25, and yeah, I'll go there. I'm not even thinking about doing Vegas now for Noche. After the way that whole thing went down, just left a bad taste in my mouth. We'll do Mexico. We'll go to Texas. We'll go to Arizona. We'll go to different places now for Noche. Vegas can have the boxing matches.
Dana, you said about that whole thing with the MGM Arena guy. Did you ever hear his reaction to the Sphere show and everything like that?
I don't give a fuck what he thinks about the show. No.